So
going into the room. So item by item then, here we have a box full. Underneath is a box full of things that could be useful for birthday presents or Christmas presents, but have just stayed there for sort of several years really, because I forget it's there. Okay, random books that I'm probably never going to read. And a few old DVDs, yoga DVDs.
And there's a box on top there. And
yeah, that's notebooks, unused,
okay.
mainly. Okay, old work files from my old job, and then there's some old DVDs that I want to get these transferred to digital. Oh god, this is all old work stuff on old books. So here, it's just stuff. There's some old clothes that are memories, my old LPs. There's some bits and pieces, an old coffee maker that I want to sell, haven't got round to it, an old duvet that's got, you know, sentimental value, some old photo albums with no photos in them, because I haven't done it yet. This is where I keep my jackets, which is a bit useless, because my jackets then aren't with the clothes and the rest of my wardrobe, so I never actually use them, but that is a jacket cupboard of jackets that never get worn. This is a box of tech, so this is one of those half-finished jobs where I identified all my old tech. Box from an iMac, which I have, which I don't know, just in case it had to be sent back, I suppose. Piles of leaflets, which are my work leaflets. This is clothes that I don't fit into anymore from when I was thinner. It's a suitcase that's kind of exploded as I riffle in thinking, oh, maybe I can fit into that. There was a load of shelving here.
Right.
And a lot of the piles that you're seeing around are basically because that shelving collapsed.
Yep.
More LPs. This is all the displaced LPs that came from those shelves. There's a whole box of them here. Bag of bags to go. So this is one of these bags that is another half-finished job that needs to leave the house and hasn't done. Keyboard here, which I used to use for writing songs. The iMac is under here. This is what isn't under here. So that's supposed to be under a dust sheet, because obviously these shelves are going to be replaced at some point. And there's a filing system that isn't used properly. My violin here is my dad's old Cine camera, because there's some stuff on Cine hanging around that needs to be digitised. A filing system that actually is a filing system that is used, those two drawers there. Office supplies in that in tray, out tray. Yeah, sort of box files that are semi in use. They kind of are in use. Some bits of tech here. So that's about it, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. So let's get started and actually do some decluttering. We can't do the whole room in one day. I really wouldn't recommend that you try and tackle that. There's a lot here for you to process. There'll be stuff you haven't seen for a long time. There'll be stuff with emotional significance. There'll be stuff to make decisions about. I think you would find it very overwhelming and tend to take too much time to try and do the whole room. So what I usually recommend is that you do about 2 or 3 hours at a time, and you pick an area to work in that you're fairly confident you can get through in that time. In fact, what I recommend is that you underestimate rather than overestimate how much you can do in the time. Because if you finish sooner, that's great, you just do a bit more. But if you run out of time, it's just overwhelming and depressing, and you feel like you failed, and you've probably got to leave the room in more of a mess than when you started, and then you don't feel inclined to start again. So always underestimate how much you can get done in the time that you've got available. And then the next thing is we need to decide where we're going to start. So we reckon we've got about 2 or 3 hours today. Is there an area of the room where you would like to start? Is there an area that you feel inclined to get cracking on? If so, where's that?
I think this table,
the desk. Yeah.
Yes, the desk could be good. Maybe these surfaces like this chair, and yeah, just the stuff that's on the surfaces.
Yeah, okay,
get the surfaces clear.
And I think that's good. Sometimes I say to people, although it's always very tempting to start with surfaces because you get a visual win, and you make some space to work on, etc. I do sometimes say to people, although it feels good to do that, start with the cupboards, because then when you've cleared the cupboards, you've got space to put the stuff that you clear off the surfaces. But I'm not attached to wherever we work. I think we should work with wherever feels best for you. Sometimes when I work with people, they say, I just don't know where to start. I feel very overwhelmed. And if they say that, I tend to recommend they start either just where they're pulled to, or somewhere where you get a really quick win. You can do it quite easily. It's going to look great at the end. Or something that's really driving you nuts, or a space that you use a lot. Or if you're really, really stuck, just start at the door where you walk in and work around the room from there. But you'd like to start on the surfaces. I think that's great. That's what we'll do.
Or, having listened to you, could possibly be that corner there, which has got like, you know, things that might be useful for presents, which is a ridiculous thing to have anyway. So it could be that as well, perhaps.
Yeah. What would you like to start with first? I mean, we might have time to do them both, we might not. What would you like to start with first?
Okay, let's start with this.
Let's start with the desk. Yeah. Okay, let's do that. Great.